Case 1. Bryan Kohberger, the Idaho student murders. The wind cuts through the pines of Moscow, Idaho, like a serrated blade. It is November. The midnight air is thin, brittle, and tastes of incoming snow. On King Road, the lights of a lonesome house flicker against the blackness of the rolling hills. Inside, the silence is heavy. It is the kind of quiet that feels wrong. A college town built on laughter, now frozen in a state of sudden sensory deprivation. The floorboards are cold. The shadows are long. They stretch across the walls of a labyrinth. 4 young souls are asleep. They are entirely unaware of the darkness moving through the perimeter. The only sound is the rhythmic ticking of a clock in the hallway, marking the final moments of an era that will never return. Outside, a white sedan idles in the dark. Its headlights are cut. It waits like a phantom in the fog. The smell of crisp leaves mixes with the exhaust. A door clicks shut. With a faint, sickening finality, footsteps step onto the grass. They are soft. They are deliberate. They blend perfectly into the freezing night. The intruder slips through the sliding glass door, stepping into the warmth of an absolute nightmare. Every breath inside the dark house hangs in the air. The heavy scent of late-night food lingers. A dog barks twice in the distance, a lonely echo that receives no answer. The staircase creaks beneath a heavy, calculated weight. A mask conceals a face. Cold eyes scan the dim hallway, hunting for a target in the blackness. The steel blade catches the faint ambient glow of a street lamp through the window. The metal is cold, heavy, and completely merciless. Then, the silence is broken by a whisper, a soft whimper, a rustle of blankets, and a sudden, violent kinetic shift. The darkness becomes chaotic, filled with the sharp, metallic tang of spilled blood and desperate, gasping breath. 47 days. In the world of a terrified, mourning community, 47 days is an agonizing eternity. The initial rush of screaming sirens, the flashing red lights, the yellow tape, they all begin to fade. What remains is a hollow, terrifying stillness. The campus empties out as students flee the invisible monster. Parents hold their children tight, looking over their shoulders at every intersection. Detectives sit in cramped, overheated offices, staring at a massive board of digital evidence that refuses to speak. The case file grows thick, heavy, and freezing cold. The primary tip lines are flooded with thousands of dead ends, false leads, and useless static. Every white Hyundai Elantra seen in a rearview mirror becomes a phantom, a predator lurking in plain sight. The community begins to recoil into total isolation. Doors are locked, and then checked again in the dead of night. The original urgency begins to curdle into deep, systemic frustration. The public demands an answer, but the mountain town remains trapped in a state of permanent, unresolved panic. It starts to feel like a ghost story, a modern myth destined to sit on a dusty shelf until the ink turns to ash. The local police face a wall of silence, while a phantom walks among them, completely unpunished. But beneath the public panic, the forensic machine is humming with a quiet, mathematical precision. The killer made a critical error in the dark. He left a singular, microscopic trace of his existence behind. On a tan leather Kabar knife sheath left resting on a blood-soaked mattress, a tiny biological profile remained. Technicians didn't just look for a direct match in the criminal database, they built a massive digital web. Investigative genetic genealogy became a silent, invisible snare closing around an unsuspecting target. Specialists analyzed family trees, tracing distant lineages, second cousins, and forgotten ancestral branches. The DNA profile became a molecular compass, pointing directly toward a single, specific family line in Pennsylvania. At the same time, digital investigators were mapping cellular tower pings. They watched a single phone power down right before the murders and ignite back to life immediately after. The physical vehicle data aligned perfectly with the genetic map. The white sedan was no longer a phantom. It was a beacon of light in the forensic fog. The net did not snap shut aggressively. It tightened molecule by molecule, cell by cell. The science had decoded his blood, and the faceless monster finally had a name. The hunt shifts 3,000 miles away to the snowy, isolated mountains of the Poconos. undercover tactical units sit in the freezing shadows of Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. They are ghosts in unmarked sedans, watching a modest family home through high-powered lenses. The target is living a life of careful, calculated, and hyper-vigilant routine. The detectives watch his every movement, waiting for a single second of human error. The stakes are astronomically high. They need a clean, unpolluted sample of his genetic code to seal the warrant. In the dead of night, the suspect emerges into the freezing air wearing surgical gloves. He begins sorting his personal trash, placing his garbage into plastic bags, and sneaking them into a neighbor's bin. He believes he is erasing his footprint, washing away his sins in the dark. But the surveillance team is watching through the infrared scope. The moment he retreats inside, a gloved hand reaches into the container with absolute surgical precision. The discarded plastic is seized, secured, and sealed before a single snowflake can contaminate the evidence. The laboratory runs the cross-match, and the trap snaps shut with total, undeniable finality. He was a man of logic, a doctoral candidate studying the systems designed to hunt him down. The killer sat calmly in university lecture halls, discussing mass murder while his own secret burned. Then, his ordinary world exploded into flashbangs. The steel handcuffs clicked, shattering his grand illusion of safety forever. Unsealed autopsy reports exposed the brutal reality of over 100 stabs. Facing execution by firing squad, the killer broke down. He entered a formal guilty plea, accepting 4 consecutive life terms without parole. The ultimate observer has permanently become the exhibit. Bryan Kohberger plea deal overview covers the breaking legal developments where the defense agreed to a life sentence without parole to guarantee he escapes the death penalty. Case 2. Rex Heuermann. Heuermann Beach. The cold, salt air crawls across Ocean Parkway, thick with the stench of decay. It is winter on Long Island, bleak, dark, and entirely deserted. The Atlantic Ocean crashes against the remote shoreline, a relentless, deafening rhythm. On the narrow stretch of coastal highway, the headlights of a passing cruiser slice through the heavy fog. But the light cannot penetrate the dense, overgrown brambles of Gilgo Beach. Inside the brush, the silence is suffocating. It is a barren wasteland of twisted vines and razor-sharp seagrass, a hidden graveyard concealed by nature and buried under decades of forgotten snow. The wind howls through the power lines, a lonely, mournful sound that echoes into the void. For years, drivers passed this exact stretch of road, entirely oblivious to the secrets hidden just feet from the asphalt. The coastal air carries the damp chill of frozen mud, brackish water, and dark, impenetrable secrets. The sky above is an oppressive shroud of slate gray, blocking out the sun and casting long, distorted shadows across the marsh. No one walks here, no one explores these dark, tangled thickets. It is a place specifically chosen for its complete, unyielding isolation. A predator mapped this terrain, understanding its cruel topography, and counting on the wilderness to swallow his crimes. The shadows deepen as night descends on the coastline, wrapping the hidden graves in total, absolute blackness. The trap was laid long ago, under the cover of a cold, indifferent sky. The years bleed into a long, agonizing silence. 13 winters pass since the first skeletal remains were unearthed from the frozen brush. The initial shockwave that paralyzed Long Island slowly hardens into a dense, chronic despair. Inside the police precincts, the investigation stalls under a cloud of bureaucratic friction and broken promises. The primary case folders, once a sprawling web of active leads, are bound into heavy, black binders. They are moved to the bottom shelves of the cold case unit, gathering dust under the sterile glare of flickering lights. The original detectives, men who swore on their badges to bring answers, begin to age. They stare at the crime scene photographs, tracing lines that lead to absolute dead ends. One by one, they turn in their shields, retiring with the heavy, suffocating burden of failure. The files remain frozen, paralyzed by a lack of eyewitnesses and a killer who seems to have dissolved into the New York traffic. For the families of the victims, time does not heal the wound, it deepens it. Sisters, mothers, and daughters wait for a phone call that never comes. They watch the news cycles move on to newer, more sensational tragedies. The public begins to forget the names left in the brambles of Ocean Parkway. The marshland path becomes an evergreen monument to an unsolved nightmare. A shadow hangs over the suburban communities, an unpunished monster walking the streets in broad daylight. The case grows freezing cold, locked inside a bureaucratic vault, seemingly destined to remain a mystery forever. But the modern world was evolving, and science does not sleep. A newly formed task force reopens the dust-covered files with clean eyes and advanced technology. They begin with a tiny, overlooked clue from an old witness statement, a first-generation, dark green Chevrolet Avalanche. Investigators run the vehicle registration data through highly specialized algorithms, filtering by geography and ownership. The data coordinates narrow down to a single, massive frame in Massapequa Park. Then, the digital net begins to tighten across the state. Forensic experts extract billing records from untraceable burner phones used to lure the victims. They map the cellular tower pings step by step, second by second. The pings reveal a precise, undeniable pattern. Every single call originates from two specific, high-intensity sectors: Midtown Manhattan, near a busy architectural firm, and the quiet suburban block of Long Island. The correlation is mathematical perfection. The electronic footprint matches a single man, but the final, ultimate trap requires biological certainty. On the burlap sacks used to wrap the victims, tiny strands of stray hair had been preserved for decades. Advanced mitochondrial DNA testing creates an intricate genetic sequence. The geneticists map the maternal lineages, eliminating billions of potential human profiles. The results construct an inescapable molecular cage. The data points directly toward a house on First Avenue. The invisible phantom of Ocean Parkway finally has a profile, a name, and a location. The investigation shifts from the sterile laboratory to the chaotic pavement of Midtown Manhattan. Undercover surveillance teams take up positions along the crowded sidewalks. They are ghosts in the crowd, blending seamlessly into the rush-hour sea of suits and coats. Through hidden lenses, investigators train their eyes on a tall, imposing figure. The stakes are immense, and the tension inside the surveillance vehicles is suffocating. They have a primary suspect, but they lack the definitive, unpolluted biological sample needed to secure an arrest warrant. They watch his every movement, parsing his daily habits with cold, clinical focus. He walks down Fifth Avenue, a large man moving with calm, deliberate confidence. He enters a local eatery, purchases a meal, and steps back out onto the concrete. Every time his hand nears a public trash receptacle, the detectives hold their breath. If he drops an item into a mixed bin, the DNA will be immediately cross-contaminated by other waste. The entire case, decades of agonizing work, could dissolve in a single second of legal technicality. Hours bleed into days of tense, agonizing waiting. Finally, the suspect finishes eating a slice of pizza, holding the cardboard box in his massive hands. He tosses the discarded container into an isolated sidewalk garbage can. The moment the item leaves his fingertips, the undercover unit moves with surgical speed. An officer steps forward, secures the box using sterile gloves, and seals it inside a biohazard bag. The chain of custody is locked tight. The final piece of the puzzle is safely heading to the laboratory. For 30 long years, he lived inside a profound, untouchable delusion of total safety. He play-acted as a normal suburban father, an architect, and a quiet neighbor. He built a family and watched the news reports fade to black. He believed the thick brambles of Ocean Parkway had swallowed his secrets forever. Then, on an ordinary Thursday afternoon, his reality shattered completely. The sharp, cold click of the steel handcuffs around his wrists ended the illusion. In April 2026, the monster was fully exposed. In a packed courtroom, he entered a historic, shocking guilty plea to 7 brutal murders. He admitted to an 8th, detailing the strangulation of his victims. The master builder had constructed his own cage. Case 3. The Menendez Brothers. The Mediterranean-style mansion sits quietly behind massive wrought iron gates, hidden from the flashing neon lights of Sunset Boulevard. It is a humid Sunday evening in Beverly Hills, August 1989. Inside the sprawling den, the air conditioning hums, a low, sterile vibration that fails to cool the thick ambient tension. The lighting is low, casting long, heavy shadows across the wood-paneled walls. On the television, a movie plays, its muted audio flickering rhythmically against the expensive fabric of the drapes. Outside, the manicured lawns smell of freshly cut grass and expensive summer fertilizer. But inside, the atmosphere feels entirely suffocating, cut off from the rest of the affluent neighborhood. 2 parents sit on the plush sofa, eating blueberries wrapped in a profound, fragile silence. They do not hear the soft, heavy creak of the hallway floorboards outside the door. They do not notice the sudden, sharp drop in the room's air pressure as the entryway opens. The shadow of 2 figures falls across the Persian rug. In the dim light, the cold steel barrels of 2 12-gauge shotguns gleam, reflecting the electronic pulse of the television screen. The air tastes of ozone, gun oil, and unvarnished dread. The modern world outside is completely oblivious to the horror taking shape in the dark. The final countdown begins with a heartbeat. The air becomes heavy, frozen, right before the quiet of the night explodes into total, absolute chaos. The echoes of the courtroom gavels faded, leaving behind a cold, permanent finality. It is 1996. The metal doors of California's maximum security prisons slam shut. The verdict is absolute, life without parole. For over 3 decades, the names of Lyle and Eric Menendez transform from breaking news headlines into legal ghosts. Inside the state's massive archives, the heavy trial binders are boxed away, gathering layers of thick gray dust. The original investigators pack up their desks, turn in their shields, and step into retirement. They leave the case behind, convinced the book is closed forever. For the brothers, time does not move forward, it stagnates. Decades bleed together in a monotonous, crushing routine of concrete walls and iron bars. Every appeal is systematically denied. Every legal door is welded shut. The family tree fractures under the weight of unresolved trauma and public shame. The world outside moves on, transitioning into a digital age, while the brothers remain frozen in a 1989 time capsule. They grow old in the shadows, watching their hair turn gray under fluorescent prison bulbs. They accept a brutal, mathematical truth. They will die inside these walls, forgotten by a public that once devoured their tragedy. The cell block is silent, cold, and endless. But a quiet, technological and cultural evolution was brewing in the dark. The breakthrough did not come from a strand of hair or a drop of blood. It came from an old, forgotten cardboard box in a relative's attic. A letter written by a young Eric Menendez to his cousin Andy Cano, months before the murders. The ink, faded but clear, detailed the agonizing reality of systemic, horrific abuse. Then, a second piece of evidence surfaces, a formal statement from a former member of the pop group Menudo. The accounts align with terrifying, mathematical precision. Modern legal algorithms and psychological metrics begin to re-examine the old 1996 trial files. The science of trauma had fundamentally changed over 30 years. What the 1990s system dismissed as a cynical financial plot, the modern forensic lens views as a desperate survival response. The digital sphere explodes, amplifying the new evidence across global platforms. A new generation maps the timeline second by second, building an undeniable case for resentencing. The legal machinery of Los Angeles is forced to reopen the vault. The old verdict is suddenly caught in a vice, trapped between newly unsealed documents and shifting societal standards. The ghost file is active once again. The legal net tightens strand by strand. The operation shifts into a high-stakes, tactical game of legal chess. Inside the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office, the files are monitored under a microscopic lens. Prosecutors watch the brothers' every move inside the Richard J. Donovan Correctional Facility. They are hunting for any sign of deception, any hidden flaw to weaponize in court. Undercover administrative reviews scour decades of prison logs. The tension spikes as a new district attorney, Nathan Huckman, takes power. The legal teams watch each other across a crowded, hostile political landscape. They examine the brothers' behavior, looking for the split-second window to block their bid for freedom. Investigators discover illicit cell phone infractions from inside the prison walls. They trace connections to an internal prison group known as the Two Fivers. For the prosecution, this is the ultimate ammunition. They wait patiently, holding the evidence until the exact, perfect moment of the resentencing hearing. In May 2025, inside a packed, suffocating courtroom, Judge Michael Jessic listens to the arguments. The defense pushes for rehabilitation while the state prepares its ambush. The judge steps forward, cutting through the political noise, and slashes the sentence to 50 years to life. The brothers are immediately eligible for parole. The net has opened, but the shadow of surveillance still lingers. Every log entry is analyzed, every word weighed. For 35 years, the brothers lived with the absolute certainty of a concrete grave. They adjusted to the rhythm of maximum security, believing hope was a dangerous illusion. Then, the historic ruling hits the airwaves. They smile over prison video links, celebrating an impossible victory with tearful relatives. The dream of walking out into the California sunshine is suddenly, blindingly real. They believe the nightmare is finally over. But the system moves with a cold, mechanical indifference. August 2025 arrives, a completely ordinary, blazing hot summer day. The brothers sit before the California Parole Board for an intense, 11-hour closed-door hearing. The illusion of freedom shatters with the sharp, heavy click of administrative finality. The board focuses entirely on the hidden cell phones, the rule-breaking, the traits of lingering deception. The application is denied. 3 more years behind bars, instantly locked into place. The sudden, crushing weight of reality collides with their brief taste of hope. The legal battlefield is littered with broken promises and political fallout. The district attorney's office fractures as prosecutors clash over the true meaning of justice. The brothers look back at the cameras, their faces drained of color as reality sets in. The steel bars remain locked, a grim reminder of a crime time cannot erase. The handcuffs of the state remain tight, proving that even when the legal bars move, the prison of the past never truly lets go.